Hello, my name is Paul, and I play drums and write stories for a band called The Wise Man's Fear. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about our most recent release, which is an EP called Slept Beneath Tarvos. I wrote down some thoughts about the storyline, some of the motifs and symbols and themes, and I'm going to be doing my best to go back and remember all the details, hopefully not forget too much. So here we go. Before we jump into the story of the EP, I just want to go over a few of the persistent themes and motifs and whatnot that are present throughout a lot of the record. Some of the major inspiration for this storyline was a cross between an intergalactic Moby Dick and Attack on Titan and this book series that was sort of a YA series called the Bartimaeus trilogy that I read when I was young. And it's also got some tones of like classic knight slaying dragon tales with a little bit of a darkened twist. Some of the central themes of the EP include confronting parts of your past or perhaps parts of your personality that you aren't proud of and that linger and cause harm in your life. The EP also talks a lot about the corruptive nature of vengeance and how a quest for revenge oftentimes ends up hurting the person who's seeking revenge more than anybody else. There's also a lot about running from parts of yourself and using a goal or an achievement as a distraction to not look introspectively and deal with parts of yourself that you're discontent with. Throughout the EP, there's also sort of major symbolism play between light and shadow, and this is used to represent good and evil, and a lot of the morality on the sort of gradient that real life actually has, and viewing things not through the black and white lens, but rather trying to see the erosion of morality over time. There's also a lot of reference to the sun or sunlight, and this can either represent the moral good that the light is talking about, or it can also represent the passage of time. So, a little bit of background info. The story starts to form up thousands of years before the events of the EP, and if you're familiar with our record Atlas Runica, then this group might ring a bell. There's a cultic group of people called the Ptolemaic Kings that were talked a lot about in our record Atlas Runica, and they are sort of the inflection point for a lot of the details. One of their members in particular was a sorcerer who lived before the fall of Atlantis and had access to the book, the Atlas Runica, which he used to open a portal to summon a demon sort of intergalactic creature thing. And he used the portal to summon this creature and tell it to do his bidding, which was to destroy his enemies. However, he botched the summoning, and instead of summoning a creature to Atlantis to destroy his enemies, he actually sent it out to a moon on Saturn called Tarvos. And in the process, he released this blast of wild magic that leveled like half of the city. This event is part of the reason that the Atlas Runica was considered too powerful for mortal hands. And in our song Through Inferno, this is why you have this sort of whistleblower figure who takes the Atlas and runs it through a wormhole to get it away from that present world. So the creature lies dormant on Tarvos for thousands of years as society sort of expands, and eventually as people on Earth start to look around for other places that they could live besides Earth. They start sending out these exploration colonies that are targeting planets and moons that have livable conditions, until eventually one colony winds up on Tarvos. Because the sorcerer who originally summoned the creature is no longer alive, there's this sort of code break that happens in the summoning ritual for the creature. So instead of only killing the enemies of this specific sorcerer, which are no longer around, it has incomplete instructions and basically operates like malfunctioning computer code, and instead just starts killing everything that it can find. The research colony accidentally awakens it while drilling to take samples from the moon's core, and that's basically when all hell breaks loose, and that is how the EP starts out. Alrighty, with that background info in mind, let's dive in. The first track is called The Black Glass Incident, and this is just a couple minutes of a log transmission between one of these exploration colonies that's just arrived on Tarvos and the Earth headquarters. In the transmission, you can hear the lead of the exploration colony talking to HQ about a weird disturbance and seismic activity that is unexpected and some weird weather patterns that are occurring on the moon. The creature emerges from the ground, flips over a bunch of their equipment and facility pods, and destroys the entire colony. It kills literally everybody that was part of the exploration colony except for one infant that is just a 1-year-old who managed to escape hidden under a bunch of rubble. Later on, when the rescue team arrives, they find something very strange on the planet. The entire surface of the moon is covered by black glass or obsidian, which is normally caused by volcanic conditions, so superheated rock. But what's strange about this is the moon's temperature, the core temperature of the moon, is frozen. This mysterious circumstance kind of creates a renowned incident amongst the colonies and amongst the headquarters back home on Earth. And it starts to be called the Black Glass Incident and is sort of pointed to as this horrific thing that people can't really explain. Some scientists hypothesize that whatever destroyed the colony was drawing thermal energy from the core of the moon and then using that to destroy the surface world. This track is super cool, partly because Nathan, our guitarist and backing vocalist, went through and generated these synthesized instruments that are meant to feel a little bit uncanny. They have basis in real-world instruments, like brass, woodwind, and strings, but they also feel really otherworldly and alien because they've been processed and changed a lot, so they don't sound exactly like anything you'd hear. A couple little Easter eggs for this track. Nathan and I were the voice actors for this track, and we processed our voices kind of heavily to make it sound distorted. And the narrative voice of the leader for that exploration expedition is actually the father of the one infant who survived the destruction of the colony, who will later become the main character for the EP. Track 2 is called Obsidian Blade. Obsidian is the code name that's given to the creature that caused the destruction because of how strange the event is. And this song is basically just a telling of the events of that first destruction through the eyes of the creature. So all the lyrics, the stylization, the instrumental parts, all of it's extremely aggressive and violent to sort of relay the inner rage and chaos that the creature feels. Some little fun tidbits about this song. On the cover art of the EP, you see at the top, there's sort of these like tentacles of a monster. This is one form that the creature takes, the Obsidian Blade. It kind of shapeshifts. It can also teleport through time and space. But that's one representation of the creature that we chose to use for the cover art. Another fun little Easter egg for the nerds among us, there's a line that includes Incarnate Crown of Madness, and Crown of Madness is actually a D&D spell that if you play D&D, maybe you picked up on, but we just wanted to sprinkle a little something in there for the fellow nerds. The creature also has a line during the song talking about his scepter Masamune, and that is sort of a double reference to not only the Final Fantasy blade Masamune, but also to who was widely regarded as the greatest Japanese blacksmith of all time, with the last name Masamune, and sort of the Obsidian Blade comparing himself to the most destructive weapon ever constructed. There's a sort of dark rap section in the song that Joe performs that is the creature's stream of consciousness thought, and it clues us in a little bit to how the spell works. There's a line where the creature talks about how he couldn't stop the killing even if he wanted to, and this is basically expressing that when the spell was skewed, he now has these orders that he can't defy, that he just has to massacre everybody that he sees. In the same section, there's a line, "No face, no name for you to jump at," which is calling out to how the creature is this sort of formless, abstract evil, and it has no usable name in our language, and it never looks the same or is represented the same way. And it's just kind of this chaotic cosmic evil.
There is no doubt in my mind that after 32 years of hibernation, it has returned.
Return is the first of these dedicated field logs we have throughout the EP. They're kind of structured with a title that might appear on like a transmission log on a computer screen. At the very beginning of the log, you can hear a ticking noise rapidly move forward, and that's supposed to indicate the passage of time as we jump 32 years into the future for the remaining events of the EP. During this 32-year period gap, the creature is largely missing. It hasn't been spotted, and people are just speculating about whether or not the events on Tarvos were a sort of one-off freak accident, or if there is some motivation behind it and if the thing may strike again. The track itself is a field log between the Earth HQ and this new military exploration leader named Captain Meldritch, who is our one-year-old infant from the Black Glass incident. He's now grown up, and he's risen through the military ranks with the sole purpose of finding the creature, being assigned to a task force to take it down and exact revenge for his family. We got super clever with the naming and just combined Melville, like from Herman Melville of Moby Dick, and Eldritch for the Eldritch Evil. Big brain plays only. Another fun detail of this transmission log is at the very beginning of it, Meldritch's voice sounds normal. He sounds just like an average person, but towards the end of it, it becomes distorted, lowered, and a little bit demented. And it's indicating that he's kind of falling into a sort of madness where his desire for revenge is completely overtaking all of his military training and any aspect of his life that has this moral tether. For the final line of this transmission, you can hear a switch flip in Meldritch, and he's fully sort of consumed by this drive for revenge. I like the tension between Captain Meldritch and the Obsidian Blade that kind of feels like that Moby Dick sort of cat and mouse. There's always this hunting dynamic. and he hasn't ever been able to spot the creature, but he's been pursuing it for years. This is sort of the emotion that he's holding going into our track Carry On. The song itself is about tenacity and persistence, even in the face of what feels like hopelessness, and sort of resolution to achieve a goal. During this song, Captain Meldritch stays on the moon of this most recent attack, which is the first event in 32 years that could possibly be the work of Obsidian, and he's gathering clues and making 100% sure that it's the same culprit as last time. Lyrically, you can follow the progression of his mental state as he goes from uncertainty to certainty to hatred into rage. He talks about years spent spiraling, tempering vengeance with insanity, and it's, again, a glimpse into his mind about how this has been his obsession for his entire life. He also talks about a birthright of fire, which means he feels destined, or he's the chosen one to take down this creature that was responsible for the killing of his family. There's a certain sense of compulsion he has in that he feels he's been dealt this hand in a violent life and he can't turn his back on his calling. A line that reoccurs midway through the chorus several times is, "To fight against the shadow, you sacrifice the light in your heart." And this, again, is a discussion of light and dark and how Meldritch feels in order to actually confront evil, he has to stoop below this ethical code that most people on Earth would hold. The chorus of this song is a balance between hopelessness and resolve. Meldritch talks about all he has is a fight against the wind and fire in his bones. And the fight against the wind is talking about how the creature is untraceable and it's constantly jumping around. And his task feels like fighting against the wind because he can't see or predict where it's going. The fire in his bones is obviously the dedication and the resolve that he feels towards killing the creature. Lastly, the line of the chorus, "Growing numb from standing in the sun," calls back to our sun theme here and how he feels morally callous just based on having spent so much time complacent. The pent-up frustration builds to a point that he doesn't care if he's being ethical anymore. He just has this laser focus on destroying the creature. The next transmission log is called Fracture, and this is the point where we can see Meldritch's mind fully spiral out of control and snap. At this point, Meldritch has spent so much time gathering clues and trying to develop a plan on the scene of the recent massacre that the headquarters has become concerned. He's sort of broken radio contact, and they're reaching out to let him know that they've recently discovered that he has a personal connection to this case. They're trying to call him back from the field and get him off the case, but he's just flat out ignoring them and severing connection. Emberrot marks the first time that Meldritch actually is able to confront the creature. He finally develops a plan to track it using all the clues that he gathered on the previous planet, and he's able to determine where the next planet it will strike is located. He gets there just too late. The creature has just destroyed another colony, but he still chases it down and gets into a fight with the creature. This track's pretty straightforward. The very first line says, "Let's settle the score." That's basically all this song is a direct call out to the creature from Meldritch and a fight. There's a line in the pre-chorus of this song about trying to slow the sand that's slipping through his hands. And this is actually a minor callback to our record Valley of Kings. We have a song called The Sands of Time, where the protagonist is suffering this sort of mental breakdown or brink of insanity because of some radiant magic. And we're trying to establish a similar connection here. Meldritch, in the presence of the creature, is losing even more of himself and becoming fully devoid of humanity. So Meldritch and the creature fight. The creature ultimately escapes. And when that happens in the song, Joe does this crazy little goblin noise thing. And that's kind of Meldritch's call out, just this outburst of anger before he yells to the creature again about settling the score. And that leads into the final lines of the song about to kill a shadow, you must give into the dark, which is basically Meldritch, again, giving up fully on any sort of ethics or morality and deciding he doesn't care what casualties look like in order to kill this creature. He'll do literally anything. A couple little Easter eggs in this track. There's a line, "No longer bound to the light," and this is a callback to our track Absence of Light on Atlas Runica. And the through line here is the cult that used to open portals using the Atlas Runica. It's the same people that summoned this creature. But that line also has a double meaning in which Meldritch no longer feels bound to the light or to morality. So again, he's fully off the deep end. There's also a little Attack on Titan reference in there for the anime nerds. rat bastard, I'll kill you where you stand. Because that line just hits, dude. Watch the show.
On the moon Hyperion. It's time to settle the score.
Pursuit is a really short transmission log. Basically, this is a suicide note that Captain Meldritch leaves as a log recording for HQ, letting them know that he's abandoning everything and he's going to basically 1v1 the creature wherever he can find it. The next moon that the creature is going to attack so happens to be another moon of Saturn called Hyperion. This leads us to the title track, What Slept Beneath Tarvos. This track is the snapshot in time that the cover for the record comes into play, and you get this image of Captain Meldritch standing on a smoldering, sort of destroyed civilization and the remains of a planet. This track is the final showdown between Captain Meldritch and the creature. Although he's fighting a physical creature, it's also representative of him fighting his grief and the past trauma of losing his loved ones and the dark parts of himself that he's kind of been running from or excusing with this goal of violence. There's another light callback to Atlas Veronica in this track with the line, "Rotted gods looking down from where they perch." It's talking about the old Atlantean mages and the gods from the cosmos, the extended multiverse that Atlas takes place in. Towards the end of this song, you get Captain Meldritch saying he doesn't mind scorching skylines, which again is just saying that he doesn't care how many civilian casualties or destruction takes place. He'll do anything to destroy the creature. Finally, towards the end of the song, Captain Meldritch succeeds and he actually kills the Obsidian Blade. There's a feature from Tyler Tate from Holofront towards the end of the song, and you can hear this tonal shift away from aggression and violence towards almost like remorse, or it's highly emotionally charged. And that's kind of indicating the very minute that Captain Meldritch achieves his goal, internally, there's this shift when he sees how hollow and empty his revenge was, and he starts to feel remorse the second he looks around and he sees destruction that he was part of and how it was a terrible decision. This sentiment also appears in the line, "Dancing like autumn leaves, clinging to dying trees." That's, first of all, one of my favorite lines on the record. I'm proud of that. But secondly, it's the way that Meldritch is feeling is he's holding on to this goal, on this thing that ultimately is dead weight. And he's given up everything for something that really means nothing at the end of the day. A fun Easter egg for this track is you can hear these weird distorted whale dolphin sort of calling noises that happens right before we have a feature from Taylor Barber. He has a clean portion. Right before that clean portion happens, you hear these weird little cosmic calling noises. These sounds are the call of the emissaries, and this is something we actually used in our previous record, Atlas Veronica, on the final song, Solomon's Gate. Towards the very end of that song, when the portal opens for Elise, you can hear these noises calling through the portal. Basically, all these sounds are is the emissaries talking to each other through space-time. Whenever super impactful or great events happen, they will sort of discuss them because they're these neutral, all-seeing watchers of the universe. If you want to see what the emissaries look like, they're depicted in our music video for the song Sea of Fire. It's kind of the weird blue-faced cloaked figures that appear towards the end of that music video. They're basically the keepers of all knowledge, and their homeworld is the planet that our song Sea of Fire takes place on, where each grain of sand is an entire civilization's worth of knowledge. At the very beginning of Extraction, you can hear this wailing noise, and that is the death throes of the creature kind of yelling out as it's been defeated. Now that the creature's dead, the delirium that Captain Meldritch has been experiencing is starting to subside. You can kind of hear it in his voice as he goes from this demented, distorted sounding voice, and it kind of rises back up to sounding like a normal human. In the transmission, Meldritch says that he's the last remaining survivor on the planet, and we use this as sort of a bookend to his tragedy, where he starts and ends in a place of absolute destruction and massacre. It's also sort of an indicator that all of his work was for nothing. Nothing's really changed, and he wasn't able to actually save people like he wanted to initially when he joined the military. He even views himself as a part of the problem because the fight that he had with the creature destroyed an entire world. This theme continues with All I've Known, and the central point of this song is just discussing the numbness and the hollowness of an achievement that shouldn't have been put on a pedestal. Verse 1 talks about lowering the floor from digging to find more. And this is just Meldritch thinking out loud about how he's trying to find new meaning in life and something to fill this emptiness that he's got now that he achieved his one goal. And all it's doing is leading him towards a place of rock bottom. He realizes that revenge doesn't bring happiness, it just brings numbness. And it gets so bad for him that at a point he misses the anger and he misses having something to focus his hatred on, because even feeling a burning passion, even if it's terrible, is better than feeling nothing. The pre-chorus calls back to our light and darkness themes, talking about how the shadows freely roam. And this again is discussing Captain Meldritch's morality, and the shadows that he used to contain within himself and sort of deny are roaming freely, and he's really lost himself as a person. In verse 2, Meldritch also mentions the world he thought that he would see was always a mirage. And again, he's driving home the point that he had this idealization of what achieving revenge would mean for him and what that would do for his life. But the reality of the situation is drastically different. Finally, we get to the last track, Calm and Disquiet, which is just a sort of play on words for calm and quiet, but with the slant of feeling this discomforting, disquieting sense of listlessness and an aimless sense of no purpose. The way that Nathan recorded this song is hugely important to the purpose and the point of the song. Nathan tracked this on a piano, stream of consciousness, no metronome, just sort of meandering, did a one take for the entire song. The end result is you get this fluctuation and this feeling of directionlessness that's built into the structure of a song. Here again, Nathan used synthesized false instruments that have an alien feel to augment the sound and really bring it together as something that feels substantial and concludes this entire story. So again, shout out to Nathan for putting together all of the transmission logs and our intro and our outro track and unifying the whole record. The whole goal of those was to create something cohesive that told a story and conveyed an emotion, and he absolutely nailed it on the head. One last Easter egg that I'll leave you with for this new record is we had a series of new logos made for this chapter of the band. There are 3 versions of the logo that we had done. One is just a simple typeface that's kind of stylized. One is what we call mid-chaos, and then the other is a full chaos logo. The 3 variations of the logo chart our protagonist's dip through sanity, and it starts off very orderly with a typography that's somewhat simple to read. It's stylized, but it's very structurally sound. By the time you get to the final version of the logo, it feels disheveled, chaotic, diseased, and just absolutely wild. All of the little spindles and arms on the full chaos version of the logo are also made to look like circuitry from a computer board. And I think that's pretty cool. Shout out to Frankie Mish of Eventide for developing those together with us and making something sick. That's basically it. I probably forgot a bunch of stuff, but that's the story behind our new EP, What Slept Beneath Tarvos. If you haven't yet, go check it out, give it a stream, and we've actually got merch on our store for this EP. If you like the songs, if you want to support the band, that is far and away the best way to support a band is to grab some merch. So I'll leave a link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you later.